This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
You're very fortunate you did not catch what was going around in the last episode of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Because there's no vaccine for it. Anyone else starting to feel warm in here?
Step right this way, Your Highness.
Are you sure this is absolutely necessary? I mean, I think there's no way I can lose the next election.
You never want to take these things for granted, Your Majesty. Besides, the 501st and even Vader himself visits this children's hospital on a regular basis.
Even Vader, eh? That seems out of character, but okay.
After new Star Wars movies in the Decembers of 2015, 2016, and 2017, 2018 will be the first holiday season not to feature a new Star Wars movie in the past 4 years. We're kind of missing the hype and the anticipation that comes with a Star Wars movie at Christmas, so for this week's hyperthetical, we thought it might be fun to look back at the last 3 holiday Star Wars movies.
Don't worry, you'll be out of here in no time. You probably have just a little cold, huh?
It's a sentient, exploding diarrhea brain fungus that I caught from someone sneezing on me.
Caught from someone sneezing on
Achoo!
Yeah, when it ended, I was like, that was it? Really? Wait, what just happened? And why did we not get to hear anything out of Luke? So yeah, I kind of felt the same way, but I was a blubbering mess as soon as the opening crawl, you know, the da 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 da. I was crying and everyone in the theater was cheering. So from start to finish, I was just like on edge and just waiting for the next moment. So that when it ended like that, it was a true cliffhanger for me. It really was. Totally and figuratively and literally, because they were on a cliff.
Poor child. What are you suffering from?
Padmeitis.
You lift up in the air and start to choke? Sissy. Little girl. Oh, Bogan. Oh, Bogan.
Sure.
Well, in other book news, I have to say really quickly, I finally did you guys get the Scum and Villainy book yet?
I have it, but I haven't opened it yet.
Same here. I love the presentation, though, with that opaque sleeve that it comes in. I pre-ordered it. I'm a member of the Science Fiction Book Club, so I ordered it with my credits.
Oh, gosh.
I saw Qui-Gon Jinn.
Welcome back, Scoundrels. Here's what we have in store for this episode. Lucasfilm has another live-action show in production, more guests are announced for Celebration, and there are updates for Galaxy's Edge. We'll get to all of this and more in the news. In our hypothetical, you'll find that the truths we cling to can depend greatly on our own point of view. That's right, Master Obi-Wan Kenobi is our focus this week. Finally, in Silence Fools, we'll discuss the results of our latest Twitter poll. We have a good feeling about this, so let's get to it. This is episode 68 of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels.
It's not a long time ago. It's not in a galaxy far, far away. It's right here, right now. Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. The Scoundrels Star Wars news and discussions with your hosts, Dennis Keithley.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Jay Krebs.
Yeah, but it's custom. It's custom faded?
And Darth Taxus. Get ready for fast-flying, saber-swinging, hot space opinions from your hosts, analysis, and other stuff, fun stuff. I'm not your host. I'm just a generic, unpaid announcer.
Thanks, Mario.
Greetings and welcome back, stuffed scoundrels. You've returned from your extended weekend to the most exiled podcast in the galaxy. I'm your co-host and dark hermit, Darth Taxus, coming to you from the safe room of my flagship, the Assessor Collector. And with me are my co-hosts who warned me to stay off of their lawns, Dennis the Phantom Menace Keithley and Jay the Hut Chair Krebs. Dennis and Jay.
Yeah, you keep trying to put up those stupid blow-up decorations in my lawn. So, but yeah, I'm feeling pretty stuffed after the holidays. Feeling like a hut myself. Yeah.
I'm like the Howard Hughes of podcasting.
Well, that was quite the introduction, but that's what I've come to expect. So we let something completely slip by that went by just unnoticed by any of us here.
All the blow-up things that I had that I put in Jay's lawn.
No, those are completely noticed.
Oh, okay.
But we have actually surpassed the 100 show mark.
Whoa!
On the show. That's awesome. Now, granted, we do number our episodes, and the regular shows that come out every other week are our primary episodes, and so this is episode 68. But when you include all of our Scoundrels special editions, this is actually our 108th episode.
Whoa!
So.
Look at us doing stuff.
Well, we are the show of record about chaos. So,
anyway, so hey, a little bit of a milestone for us. And although we didn't mention it at the time, it was still kind of cool to get past that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's been a fun ride, guys. I mean, I wouldn't do this unless I really had fun doing it. You know what I'm saying? And I know it's a very niche market, so to speak, but I feel like it's something that you can get together with friends and like kind of connect with other people who are also like friends. You know what I mean? And if anything, I just have fun doing this. So yeah, thanks for 108
Absolutely.
episodes.
108. Yeah. And it's incredible. I came on over a year ago now, and time flies, and I've been having a great time with every second. So, and you're right. It's been such a great ride to talk about Star Wars with you guys and just to geek out and just, be me and have fun with it. So thanks. And thanks for listening, Scoundrels.
Well, I've been having fun with every millisecond, Jay. So
it's not a competition.
It's always a competition.
So, I know it's been a lot of fun, and lately we've had a lot more content coming out because unlike Rebels, where we really kind of wound our regular reviews into the regular show, we've been keeping all the Resistance reviews separate from the main show. Resistance is not everyone's thing, which is fine, but we do like having those out there. We've also decided to give That's a Wizard its own platform and make it a full episode as opposed to trying to cram it into about 15 to 20 minutes because Jay just comes up with too much good stuff to work into a short segment. So you're going to see more frequent releases from us going forward that may lull a little bit between Resistance and between the seasons of that and whenever we get the Disney Play service and our seasons of Clone Wars and live action series and the like. But December is going to be busy. We got a lot of things going on, even though that last couple of weeks might be a little bit on the light side because we're getting into the holidays. But anyways, like you both said, this has been a lot of fun. It's been fantastic getting into 100 episodes. We had a lot of great experiences. We got a lot of great stuff coming up between now and Celebration, and we'll have a lot of fun things to report together from the floor of the Star Wars premiere convention. So
I feel like I should give you guys gifts. I mean, what do you give for the 108th anniversary?
A t-shirt that says I survived 108 episodes of Taxus.
I was going to say a coffin, but that's okay.
But in all seriousness, this has been fun. But we got a lot going on, so why don't we head on over to the news?
Sure.
So, unlike episode 67, there is a lot of news to report this week. A lot of news. So, let's not waste any time and get right to it. Jay, what is up first?
Absolutely. Just like many of our Thanksgiving dinners, it's quite a feast this week. But of course, the day after we reported episode 67 in typical podcasting fashion, the Cassian Andor live action series was announced. And of course, Dennis did drop that in for us. So thank you, Dennis. But a little more news on that. Disney chairman and CEO Bob Iger announced that Lucasfilm is in development on the second live action series for the upcoming Disney Plus direct-to-consumer streaming service. And Diego Luna will reprise his role as Cassian Andor, and the series will tell of Cassian's adventures as a rebel spy during the formative years of the rebellion, since he was 6 years old.
Exactly. So what do you think? What do you think about this?
Madre de Ashla.
There you go. Well, I think he had tweeted out something like he was shocked when he got the call, and I can't remember. Do you guys remember seeing this? He was completely blindsided by this, that he got this phone call and they were like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And he's like, are you kidding me? Really? Yeah. Did you guys see that?
No, I didn't see that. I did see his statement in the press release about how he's thrilled to be able to revisit this character and work with so many great people again, like he did with Rogue One. So awesome that he's on board. This is incredible. I love this idea.
It's really cool.
I've seen some people kind of griping online, and it's not without merit.
What?
Hear me out. That we're getting an awful lot of content set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. And so it'd be kind of fun to see some other eras explored. And so we're getting a little bit of that with Mandalorian, the Mandalorian. And let's just be honest, until episodes 9's out, we're just not probably going to get much that takes place in that sequel trilogy era as far as live action stuff goes. Or, Resistance is as close as we're going to get. So that being said, Cassian Andor is just a cool character. I mean,
he is.
We don't really have an opportunity to get any more content about him in a live action form. Well, anything, comic or book, whatever, that doesn't take place before Rogue One. So, yeah, I'll take it. I love this idea.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I mean, we've talked about okay, so why is he so jaded? Why is he wanting to be like this and all that stuff? And hey, we're maybe going to get the opportunity to see it, kids. And, I'm not surprised, Dennis, that somebody's griping online about Star Wars.
You want
just
some of
saying.
Well, I don't want to make the conversation about the griping.
Yeah.
But and like I said, if you look at the comics, we've got, and we've had Rebels, which takes place right before A New Hope.
Right.
We've got, we got a lot of stuff that's come just in this era. And that's fine. It's, there's a nice big 20-year chunk of time, essentially, between Revenge and The New Hope. We can explore it, but I can also understand the desire to see some other stuff.
Sure. But let me ask you this, okay? Because you just reminded me. So, I mean, do you think, they saw the fan reactions to the Cassian one-shot, for example? And, I don't know, you and I talked about the Void experience, Disney's or Lucasfilm, whatever. I don't know. They're all one and the same in my head right now. They're not one to kind of shy away from public opinion. So do you think there was some sort of testing and some sort of outcry wow, we got to get him back in because people really like him?
That's possible. I don't really have any way of knowing. If you look at the Marvel properties right now, they're getting ready to do a whole bunch of stuff with them for Disney Plus. You've got a Scarlet Witch show that's coming out. I've heard about Loki. I think on Geek Supreme you're all talking about Captain America or not Captain America, the Winter Soldier and Falcon.
Sure.
You've got these characters that you can do shows about from all kinds of different eras and popular characters. And they aren't necessarily, it's not Iron Man, it's not Thor, it's not Captain America, it's not your A-listers. Cassian is not on that A-list level as Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia, but he is the perfect type of character that you can develop, because I can't imagine this is going to be a 6 or 7 season type of a deal.
Sure,
I'm speculating here, but I'm guessing it's probably
3,
1, 2, 3 seasons. What, maybe half a dozen to 12 or 13 episodes a season, something like that. Because you really are dealing with a finite period of time that has a definite ending point. We all saw him perish in the blast from the Death Star on Jeddah. So, that's all I can say. It's that I think it's, a guy like Diego Luna would love to come back and do this role, but there's probably a finite amount of time that he's willing to devote to it.
Well, sure. And not only that too, but I think that there's, like you said, there's a lot of content to explore here, because you're talking about the formative years of the rebellion. Cassian is obviously one character, but just like with 6 degrees of separation, you're going to have a lot of maybe intertwining of some other characters, maybe some new, some that we're familiar with, that I think are going to really tie a lot of threads together. So I'm super excited about this.
Maybe some Maz Kanata?
Maybe. You never know.
Well, one of the things that I hope to see, we already know how Cassian and K2SO came to be a partnership. We got that story in the comics. But so I don't need to have that story retold on this series, but I would love to see K2SO come back at some point in this series.
Yeah.
And get an adventure with Cassian. That, I hate to put it out there as that's my requirement. That is my one wish list item for this, is that I don't even need him to be for the entire series, but just a couple episodes to get K2SO back, because that was just, I don't know, I just love that droid. That's one of my favorites.
What if they recreated the comic
I was just going to say that.
live? I know,
Yes.
Jay, because you and I are like that.
True that.
Right?
Of the same mind.
Yeah,
And that's
sure you could.
awfully scary to me. But at any rate,
You should
no, I
be.
completely agree with you, because there's a lot of people that, as much as I love comics, I don't always have the time to pick them up or to read them, So I would love to see that play out. And I think a lot of people, myself included, and obviously Taxus, you as well,
Obviously.
would definitely appreciate seeing that play out on the screen.
Right.
So-
I guess my only thought on that is just that it's one of those things where the story is pretty much spoiled before it ever hits the screen. Granted, they do this with books adapted to movies all the time.
But for a
that's just
certain
my thought.
audience is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For a certain let me ask you this real quick. Okay, so previously in the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything that's happened in the other offshoots on Marvel that have officially been tied, right? Like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, for example. We don't see crossovers from the TV stars to the movie and vice versa. You know what I mean? Do you
Right.
think that this heralds a new age of... it's sort of like when John Travolta lied that he was on Welcome Back, Kotter and got his role on, Saturday Night Fever. Because back then in the 70s, TV stars didn't do movies. Movie stars did not do TV. Do you think this is kind of, changing the whole, scene, so to speak?
Well, okay, a couple responses there. That's a huge question, and
I'm
we
a
got a lot
huge
of
man.
news to get to. So I guess my brief response to that would be, well, TV actors and movie actors have been crossing back and forth all the time, and especially, I just watched Chris Pine do the play Robert the Bruce on the Netflix movie that just came out.
that too.
And and if you would have told me 5 years ago that A-listers were going to be doing Netflix movies, I would have said you're crazy. But Will Smith just did it. And so, those are movies, granted, but they're going back and forth all the time now. I don't think it's as big a deal as it once was. These are people working, they're going back to the stage. They're doing shows on Broadway in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I think, to address something more specific that you brought up, the reason why you aren't seeing as many of the A-listers go to, say, Daredevil or even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever for that matter, is that, again, it's one thing for an A-list actor to get their own show. It's another just to do kind of a cameo on that. I mean, getting Samuel Jackson to appear on an episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. was huge. But it was just one episode. So anyway, I don't know. But
that hit
We
the
did get Haley
earnings per share.
Atwell. Oh, sorry. What?
I was going to say that hit the earnings per share that quarter for the Disney shareholders, but yeah.
Yep.
Oh, and the only other example I can think of is TV to movies is Haley Atwell as Agent Carter from Marvel. So she did go from the movie to the TV series, which I loved that series. Can I just say I missed
it. Pretty good. It was pretty good. All right. Well, I think we've covered that. So, Taxus, what else do we have going on?
Well, there's more news about Star Wars Celebration Chicago. First, Celebration tickets are sold out for Thursday, which is also known as Bounty Hunter Thursday, which is also, for some reason, something my former corporation also had. And I'm sorry because I accidentally bought an extra ticket for that day. So, sorry, guys. I apologize to that one person that doesn't get to go. Also, Celebration has announced the following authors will be guests at Celebration. Some spare named Timothy Zahn. Just kidding. Delilah S. Dawson. Love so much. I might have to take a book with me and get her to sign it. And again, Claudia Gray. I might have to take another book with me to get her to sign it. Katie Cook. Alexander Freed. Kevin. Scott. I apologize in post-advance. And Jeffrey Brown, who does those fun Darth Vader and Son books. So, I told you who I was really kind of intrigued by meeting. I've already met Timothy Zahn, so if you guys want to meet him, that's cool, because I've already been there, done that. Whatever.
Yeah, I saw
music.
Right, I saw Delilah. Dawson and Claudia Gray, they were both at Celebration Orlando, so it was cool to see them there. I didn't go get their autographs or anything because usually when they were appearing at one of the booths, the line was already insane. But when I came across it, but no, I mean, so we're in the season where the news about Celebration is going to start trickling out.
Yes.
And so we heard about the making of Solo book, and on our last episode we talked a little bit about that. And so this is the next set of guest announcements that we got, and it's always good to get the authors there and hear more about their projects. I mean, you can speculate all you want. We know that Claudia Gray is writing the upcoming Master and Apprentice book about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Katie Cook is an illustrator and co-author of this book, Star Wars Search Your Feelings, which I'm not really sure what it is.
Search Your Feelings. I think you'll find out.
Is already been announced for Alphabet Squadron, which is a book about the squadron that they each fly a different type of ship. But we don't particularly have an announcement on a new project for Timothy Zahn, Delilah Dawson, or Kevin Scott. Jeff Bray Brown is writing, I think has done a new Darth Vader and family coloring book, is my understanding.
How fun.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm expecting with this list of authors that we're going to probably be getting a couple announcements, either at Celebration or close to time, about new projects. So, perhaps another Thrawn book, whatever Delilah Dawson is going to be writing next. I mean, Phasma was awesome, so I'd love to hear that she's doing another novel. What do y'all think?
And I also love The Perfect Weapon, too. So, by Delilah Dawson. That was awesome. Did you guys catch that one also?
I still haven't got around to reading that yet. I need to, though.
Oh, so good. So good. But I would love to meet her. She just feels like a fan's fan. You know what I mean? I follow her on Instagram, and she's so quirky, and she just seems like she'd be a lot of fun to meet. And of course, everyone on this list would be great to meet, obviously. But yeah. So yeah, I'd say Delilah Dawson and Claudia Gray are probably my two top ones that I'd want to meet. Not that I wouldn't want to meet Zahn because he's awesome, but yeah.
How about you, Taxus? Is there, you mentioned bringing a book for Delilah Dawson to sign, but is there anyone else here on this list you're looking forward to?
Jeffrey Brown. I think I appreciate his comedy. I like his approach, and I think that I actually got the Vader and Princess one. Is that? Yeah. So,
that's a funny one too.
Yeah.
When Leia's going out in the middle bikini, and Vader's like, "You're not going out in that." That's a pretty good one.
And my girls were still young enough to where I could read that to them and kind of give them the look like, "This is cute, but it will happen in the future if you do this."
When at the writers' panel at Celebration Orlando, I'm trying to remember which day of Celebration it was. All I know is that I had been up till about 1:00 in the morning the night before, and got up at real early to get over to the convention center to get my wristbands for the panels I wanted. And then by the time I got to the writers' panel, it was all I could do to stay awake. I purposely picked out a spot on the back row so that if I started to nod off, I could excuse myself without making a big deal. And it was happening. I felt terrible about it because I so wanted to hear them talk about their books. And I remember the one thing that I remember standing out to me from that panel was Delilah Dawson was talking about the Phasma book that she was writing. And she said something to the effect of, the cool thing about Phasma is that when she kills you, you can see yourself dying in her armor.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I am so sold on that book.
Oh, yeah. So cool.
So, yeah, I'm excited to see what they have coming up in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Well, Jay, we've got some casting news. So what's going on?
We do. So I get to talk about both of the, standalone series here. So The Mandalorian has been cast. Variety is reporting that Pedro Pascal has landed the role. And he is best known for his work in Game of Thrones as Prince Oberyn. So interesting that we're getting another Game of Thrones tie-in. There's been several.
Okay.
So
yeah, I agree. And this one kind of confused me. I was under the impression that they were shooting this series when they announced that they had just reached an agreement with this guy. So this is awesome. I mean, it's been well received from the fans so far, as best I can tell. But what were they shooting if they didn't have their lead actor cast?
They may have been shooting someone just in a mask. If they had someone in a helmet that perhaps was doing stand-in work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They could have passed that off. Who knows?
Yeah. But anyways, but no, it's cool. I'm glad to hear that they've got it. He looks the part. I haven't got that far with Game of Thrones. I've read the first couple books and I've seen a handful of episodes, so I'm not particularly familiar with his work in particular. But like I said, he looks good. I can definitely see him playing a Mandalorian.
So where he hails from like Game of Thrones era, it's more like a Spain. You might think of it like that, you know? And I'm kind of interested in hearing if he keeps that accent or, because it's similar to Cassian's, right? Of course, Maybe they hail from the same area. I don't know. I'm just saying. Or if he comes in with a complete, I don't know, Mandalorian accent. But anyway, so yeah, that's what I'm going to be listening to because he really did a really good Spanish-sounding accent in that show. And yeah, he's also, I'm intrigued. I'm really happy to see this. So.
Yeah, well, speaking of casting for The Mandalorian, we have some other news in that regard. So, Taxus, what's going on there?
Well, I'll tell you, Dennis. The Hollywood Reporter has reported that Gina, thank you so much. Carano has joined the cast as well as in an unspecified role because she's the real Mandalorian. I'm just going to say this right now. She is best known for her work in Haywire and Deadpool and her career as an MMA fighter. And I'm just saying that because one of my friends was saying that the Mandalorian's a woman.
Well, I'm not saying she's not a Mandalorian, but given the images that they've teased us with their show, I'm assuming that the Mandalorian in the title role is a man.
Yeah, I think so.
But hey, the more Mandalorians, the merrier, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
I haven't seen Haywire. I have seen Deadpool, and I liked her in that. And I don't follow the MMA, so I can't tell you about her abilities there. But I do know that she was a popular MMA fighter.
Oh,
so,
was she that big strong girl that was taking on Colossus in the first Deadpool movie? Okay,
yeah.
All right, yeah, she is not the Mandalorian we saw.
Yeah, Colossus not one to hit girl. But
Colossus not one to hit girl.
You did it better than me. But
Thank you.
But so yeah, she's definitely got the look for an action role.
And I could see her being a Mandalorian type as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, she could be a bounty that the Mandalorian is pursuing. She could be someone that's trying to track down the Mandalorian. There's, it's fun to speculate on this one because she could be playing so many different roles on this. All right, well, let's finish up the news with some stuff about Galaxy's Edge. Sure. We've had some details announced concerning the expansions that are coming to both the Disneyland and Disney World parks. They had their D23 or Destination D Expo, where they announced a lot of this stuff. So first, they revealed a preview of the themes that John Williams is working on for the land. You can find a video on StarWars.com, and the piece was performed by the London Symphony Orchestra.
Of course.
This video was actually pretty cool. It contained footage of the construction progress from the parks as well. Did either of you get a chance to check that one out?
No, but it sounds really cool. I'm going to have to look that one up.
Yeah, it sounds like classic John Williams. And I'm not sure that I could pinpoint anything that it particularly sounds like other than to say it sounds like Star Wars. But then the construction progress was pretty cool. For me, this video was the first one that really gave me a sense of how big this expansion of the park is, and it's huge. It just looks I mean, it's not complete, but your imagination can run wild with that one.
So it didn't sound like Star Wars, it's living Star Wars. You're walking through a land that's Star Wars. You should bow down.
Because John Williams is composing it, not Bill Murray. But
all right.
But so that's but anyway, so I recommend checking that out. It's not hard to find. If you go over to I think it's StarWars.com/news, John Williams attraction names. Anyways, the second bit, they revealed additional details concerning the two opening day attractions, which I'm going to get back to that phraseology in just a second. The first is Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. They confirmed that visitors of the park will get behind the controls of the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy in one of 3 unique roles. So they didn't say on StarWars.com what those roles were. I'm assuming one's a pilot, 2 are gunners, because there's like 4 people on the thing, and then
the third's a plumber.
well, I'm assuming the other person is in charge of navigation or shields or the like, something like that. Because if you remember, Rey had a hard time reaching all the way across the cockpit to get the shields up. So I'm assuming someone will be doing something along those lines. But that is another good video to check out. You get a little bit of a tease about the Falcon there. They show some interiors on that one. And then the other attraction is Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. The description given is that the attraction will put guests in the middle of an epic battle between the Resistance and the First Order.
Yay.
This video is really cool because you start, it's on the deck of a First Order Star Destroyer, and it's a bunch of officers kind of going about their job. And then all of a sudden, one of the officers looks down urgently at his command console, and it flashes red. And then the Resistance fleet comes out of hyperspace right outside his window. If you've seen other images from the development of this one of the attractions, it's got the 2 full-size, life-size AT-ATs that are in the hangar that you'll encounter along the way. So, yeah, it looks pretty exciting.
That sounds awesome. I hope someday I get to go there, but I might have to live vicariously through everyone else, and that's okay too.
I've seen it in dreams, Shay. You shall go there and you shall have fun.
Oh, let it be so.
But the Disneyland park is scheduled to open next summer. The Disney World version is supposed to open late fall next year. I think I'm going to give them both time to breathe.
Sure.
Several months, because they're never not going to be busy, but I think I'd enjoy it more if I wasn't dealing with opening day crowd busy.
Yeah. I mean, we should really plan a trip during the off season of April.
Yeah, I don't even know that they have an off season anymore. Between
probably
things
not.
May-tember?
The Hollywood, the LA parks, Disneyland, are getting a full-blown Marvel edition to the park.
Wow.
And they were teasing the Spider-Man attraction that's coming out there. And then, if you go over to Disney World, they have the Pandora expansion over at the Animal Kingdom, and they're adding a Tron roller coaster. So there's never going to be a time where there's going to be a real off-season. So
if you would have asked me back as a kid, hey, there's going to be a Tron roller coaster, I've been, okay, but I don't, why? How? Like light cycles or something? I don't know.
It is actually light cycles, and they've already got this attraction over, I can't remember if it's Hong Kong or the Shanghai Disneyland, and it's pretty cool looking. I'm looking forward to that one myself.
Okay.
But, all right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's news. For more on these stories and other breaking Star Wars news, check out StarWars.com and our friends at RetroZap.com, Coffee with Kenobi, Jedi News, Fantha Tracks, and TheForce.net.
The kids of the 70s and 80s are all grown up, but the good times of childhood don't have to end.
Our generation can share the fun and fandom of our youth with the next generation and bring the past into the future.
And wrap it all up to make a fantastic present.
Join Jedi Schwa and Chef's Bazaar every Monday morning to get your work week started by reminiscing about the past and exploring the future with your earbuds on Techno Retro Dads.
So find us on iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, or on RetroZap.com. Part of the RetroZap Network.
On this week's episode, we decided it was time to bring up one of the most beloved and also one of the most criticized characters in all of Star Wars. We're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Over the course of the saga, fans saw Obi-Wan graduate from Padawan to Jedi Knight, achieve the status of Jedi Master, and become one with the Force. On this episode, we're talking about what made him great and looking at some of the things that make his wisdom debatable. So, with that in mind, Jay, what do you think of first when it comes to Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Well, the first thing I think of is, well, hello there. But but I think back to my first, introduction to Obi-Wan as this wizened old hermit when I, first got into Star Wars when I was that tender age of 7 years old. And, I was very enamored with him, but yet he was kind of in passing, so to speak. I felt like he was the grandpa. And then we get all of this other information about him. And it's amazing all of the things that we've learned. So, and of course, you guys know I'm a sucker for backstories anyways. So, I remember seeing The Phantom Menace and just the first time seeing Ewan McGregor on scene as this such a young little Obi-Wan. And I remember just smiling from ear to ear. So, I know we're going to get into so much more, but just the way that, my first introduction to him has evolved so much over the course of time, and such a depth to that is just, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the first time I ever thought about him, I thought, that man's just a crazy old wizard, right? But, the older I get, the more I kind of like him for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's more gray. Who knows? But, the first time, I'm with you, Jay. When I was a kid, I had the Obi-Wan action figure because I almost felt like, oh, it's kind of obligatory. I mean, spare Luke's the guy that we really want. You know what I mean? He was so intrinsic, now that I'm older, into the story of the Skywalkers. And, like I said, now that I'm older and I've had different mentors in my life, I can understand how critical and important that one special person is to guide you and direct you into the path you should become. And I really wish I met him, because I would not have become an accountant if I had.
So if we take what we know about Obi-Wan and we do it in kind of a chronological order, let's, starting with when we see him at The Phantom Menace, he's Qui-Gon's padawan. And, one of the things that occurs to me when watching that movie is that oftentimes he's kind of exasperated with Qui-Gon. As much as he's got affection for him, it's the, I'm thinking of lines like, why do I feel like we are going to pick up another pathetic life form? And, don't do it, Master. If you would just go along with the council, you'd be on the council, type of a thing. So where do you come down on that relationship? Because I kind of feel like they were both right in ways that Qui-Gon was sometimes unnecessarily defiant, and Obi-Wan sometimes was maybe too much a stickler for the rules.
Well, I think they were kind of the yin and yang to each other. Whoa. Because, of course, Qui-Gon was the apprentice of Count Dooku. Am I correct in saying that?
Obviously.
So you've got two different opposing styles, and then it kind of comes back full circle, where you have Anakin that is the yin and yang to Obi-Wan as well, because of course he was always disobeying the council and trying to go against what they said, and so it's kind of like he's almost like this balance point, almost even in the Force in that way, if you want to look at it from that aspect.
Yeah, so I mean, if I was Obi-Wan's master, he'd be like, oh, another shut up, you. Get back there and scrub those floors like I told you to. Yes, Master. But that's a good point. I mean, do you think that Qui-Gon could have, I think we've asked this before, raised Anakin better than Obi-Wan did? Or do you think it would have been a complete nightmare because they were both so similar?
Hard to say. You said we've had that discussion. And what I'd rather do right here is kind of turn the conversation to this point. Obi-Wan ends up kind of inheriting some of Qui-Gon's defiance, because he basically tells Yoda, it's like, I'm going to train Anakin, whether it's with the will of the council or not.
Quite you
I promised Qui-Gon that I would. I gave him my word. And so, how do you take that? Is it just simply him honoring the dying wish of his master, or he was not particularly excited about Anakin over the course of this movie. The concept of, another pathetic life form, and, the boys, he says to Qui-Gon, the boy's dangerous. The council sees it. Why can't you? And he goes from that to, I gave my word to Qui-Gon, so I'm going to do it. So what's your take on his, obviously they have a different relationship later, but at least at that point, what's your take on Obi-Wan there?
Well, I feel like he was so convicted. His conviction, on Anakin was just, it was there. And I feel like with Qui-Gon, sometimes he could go one way or another. He would let things roll off his shoulders. He would do things the way that he wanted, but he was so convinced he is the chosen one. You've got to do this. And so it made Obi-Wan a believer. And so I think he really went along with it to not only honor his master, but I think he really truly felt that Qui-Gon believed it to that depth. So he was going to honor that.
Yeah, I think he really did it for Qui-Gon's memory, to be honest with you. But Dennis, the more I think about well, just his character in general. I mean, he feels like he comes from kind of a background of a noble family or an aristocracy, almost like Count Dooku. You know what I mean? Where he's saying to Qui-Gon, "Oh, another pathetic soul." You know what I mean? Where it's like, maybe he's joking from a point of like privilege and honor, cue the Vivaldi, right? But I don't know. We don't know his backstory, but I know that in non-canon expanded universe, didn't he come from kind of a family that had a little bit of connections?
I'm not familiar with his Legends history beyond that point, because there was like 3 or 4 different ones. Sure. I do know that. I guess my take on that, Taxus, was not so much of those statements were not made out of a social background, because the Jedi, for the most part, were taken as infants, as babies from their home. So I'm not sure he would have had that influence. It was more of we have a mission, which is to protect the Queen and get her to Coruscant. And here we are picking up a Gungan and a child. And that's only distracting us from our mission. I don't think, when he's saying things like that, I'm not so certain it was from a position of privilege or snobbery, as much of it was I'm focusing on the task that was put before us.
Sure.
At least that's my interpretation of
it. No, I get it. Yeah.
But then, by the time we get to, and I don't want to make this conversation entirely about Obi-Wan and Anakin, but I think it's one of the things that defines Obi-Wan, is we get to Attack of the Clones. He's moved a bit more comfortably into the role of Master, and has developed an affection for Anakin. And he in that movie in Revenge of the Sith he's a defender of Anakin, which is is he not the chosen one? And he is clearly concerned about Anakin when they're protecting Padme and then Attack of the Clones, and he's like, "Hey, you look tired," and he's like, "Well, I'm not sleeping well. I'm having dreams." And Obi-Wan says, "Well, is it about your mother?" So he knows they've had these conversations. They've been traveling together. They probably spent more time with each other than anybody else in the galaxy. But I don't know that I'm really going with the question there, but do you think Obi-Wan, let's assume the Jedi Order would not have fallen, it would have been the type that could have carried on another relationship with a Padawan like that, or was this a special circumstance, again, going on to his relationship with his own master?
I think he could have done another apprenticeship, so to speak, because, as much as he did care for Anakin, it's almost like a parent with several children. When a new child is born into the family, you love them just as much too. And I do honestly believe that that he would have definitely, felt the same way and felt the same sort of, I don't want to say obligation, but the same sort of devotion, just because that's how Obi-Wan was, and how he was as a master, and that he honored that role as a master enough to put himself into it with compassion. And, of course, we can't go further than compassion. We can't get to attachment, because that's not the Jedi way. But yeah, I do believe that he could have.
Okay, so there's going to be no conversation about Obi-Wan that would be complete if we kind of did get into some of the more controversial things that he said over time. First off, he attempts to justify the lie he told to Luke Skywalker, that many of the truths we cling to depend upon our own point of view. Is this a real philosophy, or is it an excuse? And is this something he's trying to do, maybe kind of soothe his own guilt over what happened with Anakin, or having lied to Luke to get Luke to do what he wanted? Or what's your take on that, Darth Taxus?
Well, I mean, okay, so there's a certain amount of moral authority that exists between all beliefs, all systems of life, right? One of them, I'm just going to throw this out as an extreme exaggeration by hyperbole, right? Hey, murder. You know what I mean? Who says murder is good? Raise your hand.
Whoa.
in somebody's certain point of view, they might say, hey, murder is acceptable. So that as a, I don't want to say crutch, excuse. So, is what he said something that is black and white, like murder or lying or whatever? I think he had a certain amount of, I hate using this term, gray area to stand on, right? If he told Luke from the beginning, the Force? Yeah, the Force, and your father is a complete D and he killed all my friends. What? Well, maybe I should go hang out with him. No, wait, Luke, don't go. You know what I mean? I mean, it wouldn't have come off well. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, sure. I guess I see what you're saying, but let me
translate for the audience, please.
Well, no. What I was going to do is I'm going to ask this question to Jay with this additional caveat. Is it at all hypocritical of him to use this with Luke after he rejected this proposition when Anakin threw it at him in Revenge of the Sith? Which is, how could you join the Sith? They're evil. To which Anakin responded, in my point of view, the Jedi are evil.
Oh.
Well, for me, okay, here's how I see it. You have to think about everything that Obi-Wan has seen and experienced. He has gone through basically being in the presence of an 800-year-old Jedi Master, all of the teachings that he learned, watching the fall of the Jedi Order, and then realizing that some of that probably happened because of their point of view and their perspective on things. So I feel like he had a lot of time to reflect on all of this while he was on Tatooine in his solitude. And so I think that he's really come to realize that everything that we do is all about perspective. And the way that we handle things and the way that we behave and the way that we react to things depends greatly on our point of view. So who's to say if it's right? Who's to say if it's wrong? And so, maybe, yes, he was kind of squirming his way out of things, but I also think it's kind of a teachable moment in that way as well. So
yeah, I agree with you overall. I think where I still take issue with Obi-Wan on this is that it was a very delicate position he was in. And as Taxus, you were saying, it's like you couldn't just tell Luke off the get-go, yeah, your dad's Darth Vader.
Right.
And I need to train you so you can go kill him. But I think for me the issue is that you phrased it, Darth Vader was a pupil of mine before he turned to evil. He betrayed and murdered your father. He's hunted down and killed the Jedi. You didn't tell that one, Obi-Wan, where I think it was really open to a whole lot of interpretation that Anakin and Vader were the same person.
Right.
You really made it sound like there were two different people. And so, at any rate, I do think he should be afforded a little bit of latitude there because he had a very delicate position. They needed Luke in order to overthrow the Sith.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that his father was one of them, and that was going to be a huge obstacle to get around. But let's move on to another one of these bits of wisdom here. Only the Sith deal in absolutes.
That's an absolute.
It certainly is. But this one, I think, Obi-Wan gets a lot of criticism for this one. What do you think? Is it justified, Jay?
Well, I've always had a problem with this particular phrase anyway, because of every, when Yoda says do or do not, there is no try. That's an absolute.
Oh,
and
wow.
I brought that example up countless times before in other conversations. But yeah, I and especially coming from Obi-Wan, thinking about his whole history with, everything that he's gone through and his relationship even with Satine, which we'll get to. But, I can see where he's coming from in saying that only the Sith deal in absolutes, because there's so much that could be open to interpretation. But yet I think that he was just trying to send a message to Anakin, like, you can't have it both ways. And the Sith, that's how they believe, is that there is this or there's this and there's nothing else.
So,
what do you think, Taxus?
You're right. That is how we believe. So yeah, I just wonder how close he came to the dark side. Think about how you would feel, being betrayed by your best friend, your brother, and he spoke out of anger. He was screaming at him.
Wait, I'm sorry, clarification. You talking about Anakin when he was screaming at Obi-Wan, or Obi-Wan was screaming back at Anakin?
Obi-Wan screaming back at Anakin,
Okay.
So it wasn't like, you're my brother Anakin, and now I'm going to peacefully walk away. He was screaming back at him.
Well, that was remorse. That was a lot. Well, I don't know if that was anger. I thought that was remorse. I thought that was sadness. I thought that was he hated it came to this. You were my brother.
He did hate that it came to this.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not. Here's my take on it: is I think this line gets pulled out of all of its context here, which is Anakin says, "You're either with me or you're against me," and I believe that Obi-Wan was dealing with that specific sentiment, which was you're either with me or you're against me, that you are either going to assist me or you're going to be destroyed. And that's the absolute that Obi-Wan was referring to. I think it's clumsy for certain, but I don't think Obi-Wan meant it as an overriding philosophy of all things that between the Jedi and the Sith, because hey, we've seen plenty of instances where the Sith were much more subtle than that.
Yeah, totally.
And it's think of Count Dooku attempting to try and convince Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones.
My friend, you have it all wrong.
Yeah, to join him there, and it's like we can destroy the Sith, we can do this, that, and the other. So I don't know. To me, I just think I don't think it was ever intended as an overall overarching statement on everybody. That if you deal in absolutes on anything, that you're, that's the domain of the Sith. I think it had to do in that regard. It's Obi-Wan was sent there on Mustafar to destroy Anakin while Yoda was taking on Sidious. But Obi-Wan's heart wasn't in that at the beginning.
No.
I think he was still showed up there under the belief that he could convince Anakin that they didn't have to come to this, that they didn't have to come to foes quite like that.
Well, and I feel like he did not say that in anger. He was in agony. This whole thing, he had just watched the recordings of Anakin slaughtering the younglings. He was now being sent to hunt him down and kill him. And he was really in agony. And he was, even if you watch his lightsaber style, he was pretty much defensive the entire time until he, you know what I mean? Yes, he attacked as well, but he was really defensive more so than anything. He was bringing out that what is that? The Sorsu form. More so than anything. Well, so he was in agony. That's how I feel.
It's like going through all that. How close did he come to actually touching the dark side?
I don't think he did. Even right before that final blow when he took off Anakin's legs and his other arm, he pleaded with Anakin, don't do it. I've got the high ground. He knew what was going to come, and he didn't want to do it. It was... I think you're right, Jay. He was in complete agony. Taxus, it's hard to say for me that he touched the dark side. I don't think he did. It's the, again, our own point of view on this. Clearly, you disagree. But I want to throw out a hypothetical to you. And since we're in our hypothetical, I'm throwing out a hypothetical.
Sure, why not?
Let's think of Back to A New Hope for a second. Luke shows up in a ravine with R2-D2 and C-3PO. The Sand People attack. Obi-Wan's been there for a while, and he's been keeping an eye on Luke. That's his whole life, for the most part, is protecting Luke from Imperial agents or anyone else who might be coming down there to do him harm, and then one day potentially train him to take on the Sith. Then Obi-Wan's made aware of R2-D2 and C-3PO. Is there at any point, do you think Obi-Wan figured out that when do you think he figured out the stormtroopers were there and that they were going to try and track Luke down? And could he have done anything to save Owen and Beru?
That's a good question. I feel like a lot of the things that happened on Tatooine were things that Obi-Wan may have had some visions about, maybe in some of his meditations. And perhaps he felt like something like that could have happened and that it needed to play out the way that it did without his interference.
Wow.
As much as he could have stepped in and changed things and perhaps saved Owen and Beru. But who knows? I mean, that's just my take on it.
You know, Taxus, when you're talking about Obi-Wan potentially touching the dark side of the Force, I gotta believe that at that point, when he knew what was going on and everything was happening, that that Owen and Brew were already dead. They were goners, because I don't know that he could. I just don't see him sparing them, letting the Empire kill them, as something that could be justified on the light side of the Force.
That's a tough thing, man, because what if he did see Luke dying there with them? I don't know. Is it Obi-Wan seeing it, or is it the will of the Force that Luke was spared? You know what I mean? It's a hard question, man. That's a hard question.
Sure. I mean, I guess the other possibility is that in a deleted scene, we know that Luke was looking through his macro binoculars up into space and saw the battle between the Star Destroyer and the Tantive 4. So perhaps Obi-Wan was aware of it as well. And once he saw that R2-D2 was there and there's Luke, you know, it's like, well, as you were alluding to, there's my mission right there in front of me. They're safe. I have now got to keep him safe because I know the Empire is here on the planet.
Sure. And what happens on Tatooine stays on Tatooine. Just saying. Well,
I mean, it ultimately wasn't going to, because the mission was to get the plans to Alderaan. So anyway, well, let's move. There's at least two other things I want to get to here, and I know, Jay, that you're dying to talk about Obi-Wan and Satine. So why don't you do that now?
All right.
Oh, well, where do I start? Okay, so of course, anyone that has kept up with Clone Wars probably knows that Satine and Obi-Wan's backstory goes back to a very similar situation between Anakin and Padme, where Obi-Wan was sent to protect Satine, and they found themselves having feelings for one another, and things kind of blossomed from there. But of course, Satine decided to stay on Mandalore and serve her people, and Obi-Wan, clear to his cause as well, decided that, you know, he needed to stay with the Jedi Order. So that's kind of how things started and how they evolved. And a little shameless plug here. I actually have a blog on Coffee with Kenobi where I took Anakin and Padme's relationship and compared it side by side to Obi-Wan and Satine's, and kind of correlated a lot of different parallels between them and some of the things that, you know, like alike and differences, and compare and contrast. So if anyone is so inclined to check that out, I'm actually pretty proud of that one. So I would love for you to check it out and tell me what you think of it. But I don't know, how do you guys feel about their relationship as a whole before I go any further?
Well,
go ahead, Taxus.
You're the love doctor, Dennis. I'm always going to defer to you. But okay. So
I try to keep those credentials under wraps. But.
So I don't know. Like, okay. So again, I understand why they tried to maybe tamp down something, but could there be a Kenobi love child out there who's also a Mandalorian? Throwing that out there. Okay, so I mean, because one of the things that my friends and I grew up like discussing, we often theorize that the reason why, and I don't know if it was after we knew of the existence of Padme or not, but we thought that possibly the reason why Kenobi and Anakin fought was over the love of a woman. You know what I mean? And at some point in the Clone Wars, I don't know, I just got vibes like Kenobi was kind of like, there was a little bit of jealousy between them, you know what I mean? Even to the point to where that's maybe what drove Anakin over the top to try to choke her out, you know, when he saw Kenobi
he
walk
certainly
down.
thought that there was something going on there.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. All right, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Kenobi's got game, right? I mean, he really does. And I just wonder, like with the Satine thing, I mean, have we seen the full extent of their relationship together? You know what I mean? Or are we trying to gauge this through the lens of the Clone Wars only? You know? What do you think?
Well, there's definitely no love child between Satine and Obi-Wan, because of course we know that Satine met her demise at the hands of Darth Maul. But I do feel like, you know, of course, the movie The Clone Wars Attack of the Clones, came out before we started getting these stories from the Clone Wars. And yeah, Obi-Wan did kind of rib Anakin a little bit in response to that, like, you're not the only one who's in tune to things. As far as, I'm in tune to everything going on in that room. Are you? Like, he was kind of ribbing him that way, of course, but I think it was more teasing than anything else. I don't think that Obi-Wan was attracted to Padme, but maybe, Anakin he's very protective. I mean, he's just extremely protective. That's just his nature.
Yeah, I think Anakin was in the highest stress state of his life. And he's just done something that, we saw him crying on the balcony about after he slaughtered all the separatist leaders. And then Padme shows up and he looks at this as an opportunity for them to reunite. And then, he's like, we're going to take over the galaxy and make it the way we want to be. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? And then all of a sudden Obi-Wan shows up and it's like, oh, he's convinced you otherwise, because everything he's done for her at this point. But again, that's an Anakin conversation. Jay, your questions about Obi-Wan and Satine. I think there's a key difference between with Obi-Wan and Satine and what we saw with Anakin and Padme, which is Obi-Wan was definitely going to leave the Order if Satine had accepted him and the relationship, whereas Anakin was trying to have it both ways. And that conflict, I think, is what created the biggest amount of problems that they had. Obi-Wan, he was not going to try and be a Jedi and be a partner to Satine in that regard, or husband, or whatever that relationship may have ended up being. And when that didn't happen, Obi-Wan committed himself fully to the Jedi Order. So, I think, given the constraints that the Jedi Order put on people, Obi-Wan was willing to honor that. Whereas, Anakin was not. He was trying to have his cake and eat it too.
Right.
So,
and interesting, we said, only Sith steal in absolutes. Well, Obi-Wan was either going to be with Satine or not. Whereas you said Anakin wanted to have it both ways. But so that's an interesting correlation there. Yeah. But I agree with you.
Yeah, I still stand by that absolutes is very context specific. But
definitely.
Well, there are no absolutes. I mean, I'm just going to say that.
The one last thing I wanted to touch on for this conversation is, we've already talked about Anakin and Obi-Wan and essentially every aspect of this conversation. But the other big rivalry that we had was Obi-Wan and Maul. And we talked about that quite a bit in the final episode. Was it of season 3 of Rebels, or was it I can't remember if it was a season finale or not. But of course, the big showdown where they, once they settled things once and for all, and Obi-Wan essentially put Maul out of his misery. So what do you think about that? Because, that was obviously, I just hesitate to call it a relationship because, that I think that seems to imply that there's something more, some sort of a give and take there where, they were not ever allies. But
they're best frenemies.
But, at the end, my observation was that Obi-Wan almost comforted Maul as he was dying. So what do you think the reason for that was?
Oh my goodness. Well, they did have a relationship though. I mean, realistically, and there was there had to be at least 17, 18 years in between their first encounter and then their basically their final encounter. Right. But that to me was one of the most captivating scenes in all of Rebels is when Maul dies in Obi-Wan's arms. And then he basically, Maul says he will avenge us. And then he's cradling Maul in his arms. And it's almost identical to when Qui-Gon died because Maul reaches up. And then Obi-Wan, he even caresses his cheek and then respectfully closes his eyes. So I really believe there's just something beautiful and poetic about that. And it just embodies the idea of the balance of the Force. That here you have this dark side, this light side, but they're coming together in this respectful way. So yeah, for me, I love that moment. It's so beautiful to me.
I just can't add anything to that. Jay, you said everything that was in my dark heart.
Aw.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's the when I say it, just to clarify, you said there's definitely a relationship. Again, the reason I said I hesitate to use that word is I was kind of thinking of more of a partner. When I think relationship, I think more of a term like of a partnership. An Anakin and an Obi-Wan, or an Anakin and a Padme, or something like that. Whereas these two were rivals over time. I think the one thing that they perhaps had in common is that they were victims of the dark side. And that if you look at Darth Sidious, Palpatine, as being the focus, the locus, the wielder of the dark side, he used Maul to achieve certain ends, and then I don't necessarily want to say that Sidious discarded him, because Obi-Wan seemingly killed him at the time.
Sure.
But at the same time, Obi-Wan was a victim of all the dark side plans, and so they kind of had that in common. And so when Maul says, asked Obi-Wan if who he's protecting was a chosen one, and Obi-Wan, I can't remember if he affirmatively answered that or basically didn't give him reason to think
he did.
He didn't. But regardless, and Maul said, well, he'll avenge us. I think it was for that regard. It's like, we've been victims of the dark side. Our lives are, and our fates are, made us, this is what we have in common.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we'll be avenged by the chosen one. But
right.
Dennis, you said everything that was in my dark spleen.
Okay.
We got all kinds of organs going on here.
Yeah. So this
other instruments
got a little deeper and darker than I expected. Thanks, Taxus.
It is me.
But Scoundrels, we want to know what you think about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we could probably talk about it for another 30 minutes, because we didn't really get into that many adventures of Obi-Wan's.
I feel like there's more episodes that we could talk about Obi-Wan. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
He was aversion to blasters, but yet he was such a great sharpshooter.
Comes from being an aristocrat. Just saying.
All right. Well, Scoundrels, we want to know what you think, so please drop us a line at sqpod@retrozap.com.
According to legend, General Grievous was known to boast of the number of lightsabers he had acquired from the bodies of his slain Jedi enemies. Grievous was the first in a long tradition of collectors of rare items, a tradition that continues to this day on the Retro Zap podcast known as the Dork Lair. Dork Lair.
It's time for
Silence, Fools!
Speaking of silence, Scoundrels were a little quiet this past week.
Oh, wow.
So let's just jump straight to our Twitter poll. Last time we asked, which actor new to Star Wars from the Disney era would you most like to see attend Star Wars Celebration Chicago? Taxus, you nominated Felicity Jones, generous herself.
I don't remember her name.
I nominated Finn, otherwise known as John Boyega.
I don't remember her name either.
Jay nominated Rey, also known as Daisy Ridley. And then we had our other comment. So the results were rather decisive. Coming in dead last was my suggestion of John Boyega, which wow,
surprising.
13%. That was I figured to pick up a few more votes. Coming in third was other, and ironically, we only had 2 suggestions out of that entire other. Actually, we had 3. Then coming in second is Felicity Jones with 23% of the vote, and then running away with the vote was Daisy Ridley at 47%.
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
I'm guessing it's that the results of this are that people really want to see Daisy. It's not that they don't want to see John; it's just that they really want to see Daisy. But anyways,
I'm guessing the results of this vote are that people really want to see Jay win. Just saying, Jay.
I have no problem with that.
But yeah, so we had a couple people that chimed in. Why not all 3? Well, yeah, you could do
sure.
That. That was just the idea was to come up with one person. So, but some of our other comments, we had Lisa Dullard. She does a lot of work with Kenobi. Predictably suggested Alden Ehrenreich, with which agreed.
That's a good. That's a good pick, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I nearly went with that one. But
I'd go get his autograph. I mean, seriously, I like the dude.
I like it.
Courtney Martin nominated Oscar Isaac.
Okay.
And then our friend Derek Spires nominated himself because he wants to get cast as Jackson. So
Of course.
Yes.
And then Jay, I think you had a few responses over on Instagram to the poll.
I did, yes. Well, Kendall Schroeder also chimed in over on Instagram too, with Alden Ehrenreich, of course. And then our friend AF Chris 77, or Air Force Chris, he said, and I quote, "I'd have to go with Taxus on this one, even just to hear what it's like portraying a character like Jyn Erso when they know they're in for such a final and tumultuous end." So I thought that was really cool. And then he added, dropped off those prints you all sent to get framed. I'll post them soon if I get picked.
Awesome.
So, yeah, so we're really excited about that. So
Yeah, he was one of the winners in our fundraiser for Kylo and Kenobi, the Tigers.
Yeah, Jyn did not live in fame, but she died in flame. So.
All right. The new Twitter poll for this week. Not taking nominations for the answers here because there's really 4 answers. But which Obi-Wan is your favorite? Is that the prequel era Obi-Wan, which is played by Ewan McGregor, the Clone Wars era Obi-Wan, voiced by James Arnold Taylor, the Rebels Obi-Wan, voiced by Stephen Stanton, or A New Hope and the original trilogy Obi-Wan, played by Alec Guinness? So this poll will be going up shortly after this episode airs, but what do you two think? What's your vote?
Dennis, I'll let you go first because you came in last.
Okay, well, I wrote the question. For me, it's Ewan McGregor, the prequel era Obi-Wan. This was really hard. I think it came down. The more I thought about it, Stephen Stanton did a great job with his voice replication for Alec Guinness and Rebels, but it's one episode, and even though we just talked about how powerful that episode was, but again, it was one episode. It's hard to go against Alec Guinness because he essentially created the role. But we just had more from Ewan McGregor and James Arnold Taylor, and I don't know. I went back and forth on this. I was tempted to go with James Arnold Taylor. I've met him; he's a fantastic guy.
Indeed.
But just the way, James Arnold Taylor's, I've heard him explain how he came up with his portrayal on that. And it was a bit of a blend between Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor, but it's great. A lot of it's based on Ewan McGregor. And so I think that was kind of what broke the tie for me. So I went ahead and went with Ewan McGregor on that. But, what do y'all think? Do you agree, or are you going to go somewhere different way?
Yeah, so Dennis, I actually have to agree with you. I really like the Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan. And maybe it's because, like we mentioned before, the old Obi-Wan, I was kind of like, spare. Let's see more Luke, you know what I mean? But this time, I saw how powerful, Obi-Wan was, and maybe he was a little closer to my age when I saw episode 1, So it kind of struck a chord with me that, hey, this guy did things, because back then I was in my 20s and I was going to destroy everything and everybody and rule the world. Even though I realized it was going to take about 30 more years to do that. But that notwithstanding, it kind of spoke more to me. So for some reason, I feel like, the Ewan McGregor is my favorite Obi-Wan.
Okay. Jay?
This is so tough. You guys both put everything so eloquently. It's hard to add to any of that. But
did I?
I'm actually going to go a little against you guys though, and I'm actually going to pick James Arnold Taylor as my favorite. As much as I loved Ewan McGregor, and as much as I appreciated that role, I absolutely love all of the episodes of the Clone Wars with Obi-Wan. And and right now actually I'm revisiting Dark Disciple on audiobook again, and it spans so much interesting time in his life. So I really appreciate his character at that point in his lifetime. And so, yeah. And I love James Arnold Taylor, of course, and his portrayal. So I'm going to go with that one.
So for a second there, I thought you were going to go with the Christy Golden portrayal of All right. Well, that like I said, that poll will be up shortly on our Twitter account, and we hope that you all vote and let us know. Again, it was a difficult choice. No one said this one's going to be easy. There was really only 4 choices. I think someone else has voiced them in a video game or 2, but these are the 4 major rules.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Silence Fools. We're about ready to finish this episode, so what do you two have coming up this week?
You're listening to it. But no, seriously. Of course, since I've already talked about my Obatine and Padawan blog, you can look that one up on Coffee with Kenobi and share your thoughts with me. And then I also have a myriad of magnificent Maul moments on Coffee with Kenobi as well, where I dive into a little bit of that relationship between Obi-Wan and Maul as well. So, and of course, you can always check out my fashion review blogs there on my Core Worlds Couture. A little bit of a hiatus right now, but we'll be getting back into it soon. You know how that goes.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
yeah, but that's it for me.
Mm-hmm. And I will insert anything to plug, which will be the Geek Supreme. And that drops on Tuesday with Scott Murray, Jeff McGee, and Virginia Davis. And it's a fun little game show where, we talk about current topics and award points or otherwise. And there's games and stuff and, all the things you would expect from me. So, fun. Yay.
All right. You can find recent comic reviews by myself for Dr. Afro number 26, Darth Vader number 23, and others over on RetroZap. You can find my comic discussions each month with Jovial J on Jedi Journals. Mm-hmm. And you can also find my Star Wars vlogs over on Coffee with Kenobi. Scoundrels, thank you for listening and for your support. If you've enjoyed the show, this has been Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels, and we would love a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts, especially Apple Podcasts. On the other hand, if you didn't like this, please don't strike us down because we aren't likely to become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Wah, wah, wah.
Definitely not. With that in mind, we do appreciate your Twitter and Facebook posts sharing the show with your social media friends. A sincere and special thanks to everyone that has taken the time to share a show or left us an Apple Podcast review.
Absolutely. And speaking of social media, Starship Sabers and Scoundrels can be followed on Twitter and Instagram at SQPod and liked on Facebook where we are facebook.com/SQPod. If you want to follow Darth Taxus on Twitter, he is at Darth Taxus. Mm-hmm. Dennis is at DJKVER2, and I am at Joyce Krebs. Don't forget about our page on the RetroZap Discord server. We'll be there talking about novels, comics, and everything Star Wars. You can find links to that in our show notes and on our social media. Or you can even reach us by email at sqpod@retrozap.com. We would love to hear your thoughts on Obi-Wan Kenobi, but we welcome discussion and feedback of any kind. Emails, really good tweets, and iTunes reviews end up in Silence Fools. Again, our email address is sqpod@retrozap.com.
And we are a proud member of the RetroZap.com podcast network. Please check out RetroZap for other great shows, including the Superhero Suite featuring Jay and Josh, other Star Wars shows such as Beltway Banthas, Kanada's Castle, and Brews and Blasters, collecting shows like The Dork Lair, and other great shows like Animanicast, The ArgCast, The Deucecast Movie Show, The Dunecast, Warp Trails, Techno Retro Dads, and We Know Nothing. Also, be sure to check out our Scoundrels t-shirts on TeePublic. The link to our show is in the show notes. So, need to fake your own death to hide out in exile? Just buy a lot of shirts and leave them near the crash site.
Thanks to Aaron Lay for our show logos, and to James Volpe, the Sky Geek, for our The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly show logo. Special thanks to Mario and the Scoundrels players for lending us their voice talents.
And here is our disclaimer. Starship Sabers and Scoundrels is not endorsed, affiliated with, or sponsored by Lucasfilm Limited and/or Disney. This show is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All characters, music, and sounds are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. All else is the intellectual property of Starship Sabers and Scoundrels unless otherwise indicated.
Very good.
I should know better than to ask this, but any final thoughts?
Yeah, I actually have a quick thought. So, no man is an island, unless he is incontinent.
That will do it for episode
I just
60.
got that.
Well, that will do it for episode 68 of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Thanks for listening. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
And also with you.
How about you, Taxus?
I'm really not sure. I just, I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, I'm sorry. My dog was doing something. I lost, complete attention to your initial question.